Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Craig Sellars. An absolute pleasure to be here in Kyiv. I'd like to give a big round of applause for Mike Kostash and his team for putting on yet one more amazing d10e. The topic I'm discussing today is the living blockchain. I've begun recently thinking about blockchains in a little bit different way based on the experience we've had over the past 4 or 5 years of building decentralized systems. The first question that I think people ask when we talk about blockchain technology is, what is a blockchain? And some of the common answers that we actually get are that it's a distributed ledger, a decentralized thing in the cloud that is public, that everyone can see. Technologists may tell you that it's in fact getting bigger over time, and it's an append-only database. Well, I've found that at the base level of all blockchains, there are two very important attributes that to me are the most important. And that is that a blockchain enforces what I call digital scarcity. In the real world, everything is scarce. I have one cell phone in my pocket. I have a certain number of forks and spoons and Coca-Colas and things that I own, and they're all, by their very nature, by being physical, scarce. The innovation of the blockchain is to allow all of a sudden in the digital world something to represent something that is also finite and scarce. It is the primary innovation of blockchains, and it is the one thing that they actually enforce. The second most important thing that a blockchain does is, in fact, assign ownership. So if I have the keys to my identity, and that identity has a repository of data, that data has value by being scarce, I have the ability to assign ownership of that value to some other third party without ever asking for permission. So these are the two most important components of a blockchain that they provide. So when somebody asks me, what is a blockchain, these are the answers that I give them. So there are what we call algorithmic tokens. So we started with Bitcoin, it then progressed to things like Litecoin and Ethereum, where there's an algorithm that defines how many coins will exist, when are they produced, how are they used, et cetera, within the network. This provides a crypto economy that allows all participants to actually understand and know what the rules of the system are, and they will continue operating forever until there are hard forks and other reasons to change those networks that require the entire network to agree. So some of the attributes of these algorithmic tokens that we all are familiar with is they are all in fact scarce and finite. Bitcoin, for example, will only ever have 21 million tokens. Ethereum has a growing number of tokens at a perceived and accurate rate over the course of each year. All these tokens are also authentic. When you mine tokens, you know for a fact that that miner is the owner of those number of tokens that were created for that particular block. And you can trace all tokens back to their initiation point. So in the event of Bitcoin, it's the mining. In the event of Ethereum, it's also mining or proof of stake as it comes along. For other tokens, you can actually see the creation event for how many tokens should exist, like you've seen in many of the ICOs. So you can tell that they're all authentic. The next is they're transferable. This goes back to the assignment of ownership. I can take that value, and as long as I know how to identify you, I can transfer that ownership to you. Now, they're also possessible, which is once it is transferred, unless you have the private key, no one else can touch or seize or do anything with that value without your permission or delegation. And the last aspect is, of course, that they are traceable. As those things move along the public ledger, you're going to be able to see how they transferred and to whom they transferred it every step along the way. So what I've noticed here is that all decentralized systems seem to exist as a balanced network. So let's say it's 100 years from now, and we use Bitcoin as the example. 100 years from now, every 10 minutes, a block is still going to be produced. We're all going to be dead. Well, maybe not all of us, but in the future, there will be different miners. There will be different nodes that are operating. And very similar to the cells inside of our body, they're going to get replaced over time. But that body still stays functional and still follows the same rules of biology. So we've got decentralized systems. We've got delegation in these networks. We've got checks and balances. Bitcoins themselves are actually best used as spam prevention. You must pay a small amount of Bitcoin to get your message recorded on the network. So there's a balance in the consumption and creation of these tokens. These networks are also autonomous. Since they're decentralized, there is no central hub. No one needs to run the Bitcoin network. We all run the network. And they're in fact self-sufficient as well. So on this slide is actually a picture of a terrarium. This is a self-contained living system where the bacteria, the air, the water, et cetera, is all contained within this little glass bulb. And forever, this thing will continue operating without any outside interference. So in essence, I'm making an argument here that blockchains are in fact living things. Not biological living things, but the first example of technological life. And when you create technological life in the sense of a decentralized blockchain, what you'll find is that that element of scarcity is actually a necessary component to the operation of the system. So you're going to hear lots of pitches about blockchains and ICOs where someone has invented a token that's required to be used for a system. Now, I'm not really a fan of those things because that's a token that's been created to put into a box, turn a lever, and have something pop out. What you'll find in some of the projects that I've been working on and some of these more algorithmic things is, in fact, the scarcity is discovered. And that scarcity then gets distributed to various users so that they can actually participate in the network, and the scarcity becomes a very necessary component to the operation of that network. So in essence, a blockchain, it's not a biological living thing, but it is, in fact, a living thing. So my question is, what can we build on top of a living ecosystem? Best example I can come up with is more living ecosystems. And so what I've been working with for the past 2 years is a group called BlockV, which is actually working on a protocol and object definition standard that takes what a digital asset is and begins to add more components and capabilities to them to actually create an experiential network. So imagine for the moment that it's 1991 and you're dialing into the internet and it's green text on a black background. There is no web browser, there is no images, there's no graphics. You're pretty much sitting in the back closet flipping switches and levers to use this system. Now, those of us who were around back then, I was like 14 or 15, knew that it was impactful, it was going to change the world, but we couldn't explain to anybody how or why, because it was green text on a black background. We needed something experiential that people could actually touch and interact with. And I think that is the next evolution of digital assets. So we had algorithmic tokens, such as Bitcoin and Litecoin and Ether, and in our experience of development, we realized we could create managed tokens. So Tether is an example of a managed token. We took currencies, the US dollar, and created a crypto token that was matched one-to-one with tokens sitting in a reserve, or with dollars sitting in a reserve. And those things stayed one-to-one. So if you knew how many tethers existed on the blockchain, you'd know how many dollars existed in the reserve. This sort of mapping now is what a lot of security tokens are actually themselves doing. They're saying, I have digital scarcity on a blockchain. I can now refer to something in the real world, but tokenize it. And this is where things begin to get very, very interesting. So, all of the examples I've given you, every single one of these is what we call a fungible token, which means every Bitcoin is the same as every other Bitcoin. Every Tether is the same as every other Tether. In almost every ICO you've heard today, or we'll hear tomorrow, every single token is exchangeable for every other token. The question is, what happens when you drop fungibility and say that things can be actually individually unique on a blockchain? So we've got finite, authentic, transferable, possessible, tradable, traceable. What happens if we add some new attributes to these digital assets? Well, we started with Bitcoin, which is algorithmic. We built a platform called Omni, which allowed for managed issuance of one-to-one tokens. We then built Tether and backed those managed tokens with dollars. Now what we're doing is we're saying we're creating digital objects, and these things can represent something in the real world, or they can represent something unique on a blockchain itself with programmability. So now all of a sudden, if you could imagine, for example, a Pokemon Go character that sat in your Bitcoin wallet that you needed to feed, you needed to care for, because its attributes would change. And the Pokemon Go character you have in your wallet is going to be different from your friends because you took care of it differently. All of a sudden, that lack of fungibility gives you some really interesting capabilities. So let's add programmability to a digital asset. Now, when you pull up one of your Bitcoin wallets or your Ethereum wallets today, you're going to see a balance. It's going to be a number. I've got 0.25 Bitcoins. And that's pretty much what the interface looks like. It's kind of clunky. It's a number. It's a balance. Once you add programmability, though, to these things, it's not just a balance. There's actually code behind what that asset, what that token should actually do. So once you've programmed it, why can't that asset be a 3D character? Why can't it be something that's interactive, that I can actually play with within my wallet or interact within my wallet? What happens if I can make these things combinable? Let's say I have two assets. Let's say I'm walking through a mall, and I get to pick up little puzzle pieces. Each puzzle piece goes into my Bitcoin wallet, but as long as I have all of those puzzle pieces and put them together, I get a brand new asset in my wallet. And that asset is yogurt or something I want to exchange. If they're redeemable, combinable, programmable, now I can tell my asset that with certain actions, they can actually change. Let's say I have a voucher for a Coca-Cola in my Bitcoin wallet, and I take it to a store, and I redeem that Coke. Well, I've now gotten value out of that, but Coca-Cola wants to spread the word. So they've programmed this asset to actually allow me to send and share that same asset with 4 of my friends. Every single time I share it with the next person, that Coke bottle fills up, 1 quarter at a time, until that viral spreading has satisfied the program's concerns, at which point I can get another free Coke. All because I've done this thing with a programmable digital asset. So what happens also if these assets are in fact network aware? They can listen to things off of the blockchain. They can listen to the real world. So if I have a digital asset that's a collectible card, like a NASCAR trading card, And let's say that Jeff Gordon wins a race, and the system who programs this particular asset actually knows that Jeff Gordon's won the race. If I hold the card in my wallet at the moment of that win, it now is special. It's different from any other Jeff Gordon card I could buy because I owned it when something special happened. It becomes itself more valuable, all because something off the blockchain just informed what my blockchain wallet is going to contain. And then, of course, you can add interactivity, artificial intelligence. These things can themselves become autonomous and self-sufficient and interactive with one another within your wallet. So it's not just a balance on a screen anymore. It's in fact experiential digital objects that are programmable, you can play with, you can feel, you can touch, you can find, you can create yourself. So at BlockV, we've created a developer platform that defines what is a digital object, how do you create one, how do you program them, who do you talk to, what are the resources? And then we open up broad creative options for the creative professionals in this world to say, how do I find value out of a digital object? So instead of a wallet of balances, you now have a collection of things. Each one is unique. Each one can do something special. It goes so far beyond what we've been looking at for the past several years in the blockchain space with green text on a black background and dip switches in the back. It's actually the web browser. It's actually something you can touch and play with and interact with. This is what lays the foundation for the entire world using a blockchain without even realizing they're using a blockchain underneath. They get all the benefits of the things that we care about, that we know about, and that we, being on the crest of this wave, know exactly how to build. So the next question I've got is, who are you? Each one of us who has these things in a wallet. This is a discussion for a further time, but I will tell you this. You are, in fact, a digital object yourself. Your avatar, your attributes, these things about yourself are inherent to you and the things that you own and the relationships that you have. We'll go into that at a later time, but something to think about is you, in fact, yourself are a digital object. So I'd like to close by telling you guys that the future is a story waiting to be written. Okay? We're here to write that story. It's at the intersection of experiential technology, which you've just seen, and that will be created by the creative professionals of the world on top of a blockchain, and our collective imagination. And there is no limitation to that. So please enjoy the rest of the show. You can find more information about BlockV at blockv.io. The co-founder and CEO, Reeve Collins, is giving a pitch tomorrow, which I absolutely recommend you guys see. And I look forward to talking to you guys about some opportunities.